And welcome back, everybody. We are here for the finals of Victory Road's Galar Farewell tournament, hosted by Victory Road and sponsored by GGtoor. And what a journey from this top cut that we've been able to stream to you lovely people. Where we do have the final verdict. We've got Juan Manuel Odriozola versus Tomoyuki Yoshimura, aka Snow. And what a way to go. Number 1 seed versus number 3, I believe, Charlie.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, Costa. Incredibly consistent performances from all these players. Why don't we take a little look now at the top 8 bracket just to see the path that they took to get here to the grand final of this Galar Farewell tournament. They're both of these players we featured on stream so far today against different opponents, so it'll be really interesting to see how they match up against each other. Just working now on getting that top cut bracket to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with the games as well, with the sort of team compositions from both of these players, we've seen that Juanma has been leading the Swordfish archetype so far, has been doing incredibly well with the Landorus Therian, Thunderous Incarnate, Grimmsnarl, and the Celesteela, whilst over on Tomoyuki's side, we have gone ahead and seen Zacian, Kyogre, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Whimsicott, and the Thunderous Incarnate, which of course we'll be able to present the bracket in a very short moment. Here we go, as it is, and we'll be able to monitor how they've done so well against the other archetypes they've been having to deal with. For example, I think Tomoyuki was just now up against Gaetano Di Trapani, an Italian player rocking that Lunala and Groudon team.
That's right, and we see that Juan Manuel and Tomoyuki have the same restricted pair in the Zacian and Kyogre Swordfish, the archetype that everyone thought would do so well, and it did still do very well. It's a very dominant archetype throughout the season. Facing off against each other, but the supporting Pokemon are really quite different. We have Landorus Therian and Thunderous, Grimmsnarl, and Celesteela for Juan Manuel. Meanwhile, for Tomoyuki, we have the Incineroar, Rillaboom, Whimsicott, and again, the Thunderous Incarnate there. Will now finally be the time for you to see your Celesteela, Costa?
Yes, I hope so, at least. We'll see if Juanma will have been responding to my messages or not, with my complaints of not seeing Celesteela yet. But, of course, that's left to be seen. I think it'll be very exciting and fascinating to see this very hype final between both of these very, very great world-class level players. As naturally speaking, looking at the matchup itself, like you said, Charlie, we've got the Swordfish coming out from both of the teams. We have seen utilization of both of the Thunderouses available. And we know that there is Intimidate on play from both sides as well.
That's right, we have Intimidate from both sides. Do not want to be giving a Defiant boost to the Thunderous on either side of the field, if that is indeed the ability being run there. We have the Grimmsnarl on Manuel's side, able to boost up the defenses of his own team. Meanwhile, a Whimsicott for Tomoyuki, meaning it can go for a more sweeping mode, a faster mode there via potentially a Tailwind. And I don't believe we've seen a Rillaboom come out yet in the games that we have cast. So I imagine, given a Kyogre on Juan Manuel's side of the field, we may well be seeing that.
Yeah, we could definitely be. I think having grass terrain on the field, having the prioritization of the Grassy Glide interaction with it makes a lot of sense too. Fake out pressure, once again, another fake out user. Very, very crucial to have on any sort of situations where you don't expect your opponent to go for the Dynamax mechanic, to simply ignore getting flinched. But I think in this situation, Whimsicott is a very interesting Pokemon. It can go ahead and get the Tailwind set up like you said. It does have the prankster availability to it, and it, if I'm not mistaken, did have Tickle, I think, available to it, where it was able to go ahead and have very good synergy with any of its physically, oh my lord, physically empowered partner Pokemon such as Zacian, or let's say a Rillaboom, or even that Thunderous, which could really synergize quite well.
Wow, Costa, master of the tongue twisters there. Physically
It really was. It really was a moment. You can tell the tiredness is starting to come out. But yeah,
Absolutely.
100%.
You really chose your words there.
Right.
But we're about to get into this game, and you're right. It's a really interesting set that Tomoyuki's running on that Whimsicott, and one that I would not be surprised if Juan Manuel is not expecting. But we shall have to see the interaction there. Both of these players, of course, very well qualified as we get into this grand final of Galar Farewell, sponsored by GGtoor. We see Kyogre and Whimsicott coming out from Tomoyuki. Meanwhile, Kyogre and Grimmsnarl coming out from Juan Manuel.
Yeah, so we got double whales on the field as well as double prankster Pokemon too to accompany them. So in this situation, I think Grimmsnarl at least is not affected by any sort of prankster moves, so it has that sort of advantage going for it. It can, if it for whatever reason does have Fake Out available to it, can do it, but from what I've imagined and remember, we have never seen this Fake Out being utilized by the Grimmsnarl. However, we've got the screen set up from the Grimmsnarl potential, as well as Scary Face to be able to slow down the speed sort of advantage of any tailwinds that may be coming out from Tomoyuki's side.
That's right, and we saw the drizzle on Tomoyuki's side going off first, meaning that perhaps it is the faster. Could have been a speed tie, but given the Whimsicott is there, is quite possibly faster. But we see a Moonblast coming out from the Whimsicott into the Grimmsnarl there. Meanwhile, we see a big water spout coming out from Kyogre on Tomoyuki's side of the field, taking Grimmsnarl down to about a fifth of its health. Meanwhile, Thunder coming out from Juan Manuel into Tomoyuki's Kyogre, dealing around a third of its health, but oh no, it does get the paralysis on Tomoyuki's Kyogre there. That is something that we've seen wreak havoc amongst, for example, Matthew Morgan earlier today.
What an electrifying performance of RNG rolls in that situation coming out from the Kyogre's Thunder. But of course, what does that mean, though? I think the fact that we've got light screens set up from Juan Ma's side is really good. It did definitely pay dividends there in the sort of survivability of both of his Pokemon, especially with the fact that Whimsicott opted to go for the Moonblast there. Super effective, makes a lot of sense against Grimmsnarl due to its dark typing duality. But in this scenario, wasn't able to get any sort of real damage dealt to the point where he could pick up a KO.
That's right, but we do see another Moonblast coming out from Whimsicott going into Juan Manuel's Kyogre. Really doesn't do much damage at all through that light screen, but it does get a special attack drop on the Kyogre, which is not something it wants to receive. We see an Origin Pulse coming out from Juan Manuel's Kyogre, and there you go, you see with the special attack drop, it really does pay dividends in terms of damage output. Meanwhile, a full paralysis for Tomoyuki's Kyogre there, which is really frustrating for him.
No, it really is, and I think that's very unfortunate because obviously that's kind of how it goes with paralysis. The main sort of crucial point being halving of the speed, but you know the secondary effects always there of having that full paralysis, a potential chance of being cropped off to the point where, you know, all of a sudden it can change the board state completely. They're not being able to utilize a single move. The only move that you're allowed to use during any given turn is quite crucial to the point where right now Tomoyuki's not able to get the damage, at least that he would have liked to try to go and get, maybe dealing onto both the Grimmsnarl and the Kyogre in the form of, let's say, an Origin Pulse.
Absolutely, we see this Whimsicott putting in more work with a Moonblast onto the Grimmsnarl. This time it is enough to pick up the knockout, so that goes down for Juan Manuel. We see an Ice Beam coming out from Kyogre into the Whimsicott, which of course is super effective, but isn't enough to pick up the knockout. Meanwhile, we see a responding Thunder from Tomoyuki's Kyogre into Juan Manuel, but thanks to that light screen, it's taking these hits like a champ. Both of these Kyogres behaving very bulkily as we see Thunderous coming in for Juan Manuel.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just going ahead and showing why screens is such a powerful sort of strategy to go ahead, especially when your Grimmsnarl cannot be affected by any sort of, let's say, taunts from prankster users and has that prankster availability to itself. But now we do actually have that Thunderous Incarnate on the field right now to the point where it can start going ahead and utilizing any sort of Dynamax options if it so chooses to. Go for Max Airstream, go for Max Lightning, potentially threaten that Kyogre physically, as at the moment we know that if this Thunderous is a Defiant ability sort of Pokemon that's used, Tickle will actually work against Tomoyuki's plans and maybe even potentially force a +4 in attack Thunderous, which I don't think Tomoyuki's kind of looking for at the minute.
You're so right, Costa. Yeah, I feel like in a Dynamax format where stats are lowered all the time thanks to the secondary effects of max moves, a Pokemon with the Defiant ability can really benefit. But we see Zacian coming in for Juan Manuel, getting that Intrepid Sword boost immediately as it hits the field, as we do indeed see the Dynamax onto the Thunderous for Juan Manuel. It may not be prepared for the specific moveset on Tomoyuki's Whimsicott, but it's in a fairly good position here, being super effective against both it and the Kyogre on Tomoyuki's side of the field.
Yeah, exactly that. And going ahead and utilizing that Thunderous Dynamax right now is quite crucial. You can put on a lot of pressure. We know that the paralysis is still in play for that Kyogre, which means even if a Tailwind setup, this Thunderous will outspeed and move first. In comparison to this Kyogre, deal a lot of damage. Not quite pick up a KO. Maybe Juan didn't want to commit to a Max Lightning there for whatever reason, wanted to try to force Airstream Boost, but we actually see Origin Pulse unfortunately missing the Thunderous and failing to connect.
Yeah, that's a real shame. To add insult to injury to this paralyzed Kyogre, we have a miss of the Origin Pulse. It was bound to happen at some point. It's not a 100% accurate move, but as it is, that Thunderous is still there on full HP in its max form. This Whimsicott still sticking around, definitely not the bulkiest Pokemon, quite a frail Pokemon in fact, but it's still here, ready to cause havoc, potentially for Juan Manuel.
Yeah, it's definitely out there to deal as much damage, or at least improve Juanma's position. In this situation, that's essentially what you want from this Thunderous. Tomoyuki's not in a very good situation, even though they have the advantage over Juanma when it comes to the remaining available Pokemon.
That's right. We see the Zacian here playing it safe, going for a little Protect. Meanwhile, we see another Max Airstream coming out from the Thunderous, and this time it is enough to pick up the Whimsicott, and that means we now have a double speed boost onto the Thunderous and the speed boost onto the Zacian as well. So if Tomoyuki isn't careful, Juan Manuel could well run away with this game.
Yeah, and that's sort of the nature of having a Zacian, already powerful and fast Pokemon, just getting another boost. And especially when having this Thunderous by its side, having the availability of Defiant means that, sure, if you want to go ahead, or your opponent wants to go ahead and bring in an Intimidate, yes, it will drop Zacian's attack from +1 to neutral, but you are proccing that Defiant. You're going to be getting even more powerful Thunderous retaliating as a subsequent to that sort of a strategy.
Absolutely, Costa. Thunderous is such a hazard in this particular format. And Tomoyuki is in not the best position here. One thing he does have in his favour is he hasn't used his Dynamax yet, and it could well be that a late-game Dynamax comes in, pays dividends for him. But as we've seen throughout the stream so far, Juan Manuel locks in his moves very quickly indeed, very confident. Tomoyuki takes more time to think about it, which, as we saw in his match against Joe Ugarte, was beginning to counteract what he was aiming to do, because he was in danger of running out of time there. So he'll just have to keep an eye on the clock as this match continues.
Most definitely. And in this scenario, we do have the situation where Thunderous can just keep on piling up those max Airstream boosts. Zacian just wants to go ahead and just deal damage to whatever it can. So I think it will just come down to Juan deciding, right, which slot do I want to focus into? Do I want to kind of spread the damage? Maybe pick up a KO if this Kyogre does stay on the field. Even through Protect, I could try to go for a max Airstream, hope that that's enough. Or do I want to focus down on a Zacian, not expecting it to actually go for a Protect? Maybe it wants to attack, and Tomoyuki wants to try to get a bit more of that board pressure going. So we're going to have to see and find out, as there's no Protects.
Absolutely, we see a Behemoth Blade come out from Tomoyuki's Zacian, targeting down into Juan Manuel's own Zacian, which brings it down to the red health, but it does survive. Meanwhile, we see Behemoth Blade in response from Juan Zacian coming out, and this one is going into Tomoyuki. They're trading Behemoth Blades, and that's a lot of damage. It brings it down to the red as well, lower than Juan Manuel's own Zacian. And we see another Airstream coming out from Thunderous into the Kyogre. It is enough to pick up the knockout. And this Thunderous is now on +3 speed. And the Zacian is also incredibly speedy on Juan Manuel's side. So a lot of offensive pressure coming straight out from Juan Manuel.
Yeah, 100%. And I think in this scenario, let's say obviously Tomoyuki still had the availability of Tailwind that is likely to cease in the oncoming turns, if not just now at the end of this one. And let's say, for example, there is an additional turn of Tailwind. Juan's Zacian does still have the option of going for Protect. That means that, obviously, it will 100% guarantee that his Zacian will be faster than Tomoyuki's. So, in this scenario, Tomoyuki may try to be stalling for time, as, if I'm completely honest, I feel like this is highly in Juan's favor at the moment to wrap up this game 1. So, we do commonly see, at a very high level, players do want to try to take as much time as is available to them to further strategize based off of, can they get this win back if possible? Can they bring it back? Or what can they better adapt and optimize going into game 2?
Absolutely, yeah. It might be that Tomoyuki in this position is still playing the game out in order to just gain some information that could help him in the subsequent game. But we see Tomoyuki's own Thunderous coming out for him now, and really at this point it looks like it's his only Dynamax option. He was, I imagine, was intending to Dynamax that Kyogre, but now it's gone, and also since it was paralyzed, that didn't look like a likely candidate. And this is the risk you run with a late game Dynamax. It could just be an opportunity that's completely taken away from you.
Yeah, it really is. And I think given the sort of pace that we're at the moment, it's very high pressure. We've got this being the finals, of course, of the final Victory Road hosted a Sword and Shield tournament. So in this scenario, Tomoyuki is wanting to go ahead and see if they can go ahead and bring this back with a Dynamax of their own, which they had not utilized as of the current moment throughout the entirety of this game 1. And it is going to be that Thunderous now, Johnny.
It's going to be the Thunderous. We'll have to see if it can deal out as much damage as Juan Manuel's did, but it in fact goes straight for a Max Guard, playing it more conservatively. And that Behemoth Blade from Juan Manuel's Zacian was going into the protected Thunderous. Meanwhile, we see Juan Manuel's own Thunderous going for a Wild Charge, and that is, of course, enough to pick up the knockout. And to add insult to injury, it's a critical hit there. That did not matter at all. This Thunderous is incredibly fast, and it's incredibly offensive.
Yeah, and I think in this situation, Tomoyuki, I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing. I'm a bit split on this decision on whether revealing that you do have a potential Max Guard move that you can power off of, because naturally speaking, this is still a closed team sheet tournament, so information is quite vital to understanding your matchup and the flowcharts that you need to go in with it, as we are going to be seeing the Behemoth Blade deal substantial amount of damage and likely just survive this wild charge we do see, but the following turn it may prove to be a little too late for this Thunderous.
That's right, the fact that Tomoyuki's Thunderous is moving last is really crucial here, and it just goes to show how important speed control is in Pokemon. Yes, you could have the most offensive threat on the field, but if it's moving second, then it's not going to be able to make use of any of that. Meanwhile, Juan Manuel, of course, has another Pokemon in the back. This Thunderous on incredibly low HP, and being slower than the Thunderous on Juan Manuel's field, it looks like it's game over.
Yeah, most definitely is game over. So I think Tomoyuki is just going to have to go back to the drawing board right now and see what can work going into this game to try to bring this set back and potentially crown themselves the champion of the Galar Farewell tournament and claim very handsome amount of prize pool rewards and money after this as well. So very close. Gonna have to see. Juan Ma, though, did an exceptional job, as always. 8-0. It's not something to scoff at.
It's absolutely incredible. His performance has been so assured throughout, and I gotta say again, I'm so impressed by how quickly he locks in those moves. He's so confident with what he does. It seems like he gives the impression that he's just practiced every matchup that he possibly could.
Yep.
And it's Tomoyuki now going into game 2. How is he going to deal with the threats on Juan Manuel's side of the field? We weren't able to see any of the spicy moves coming out from his Whimsicott. And it'll be interesting to see some of those come out, but what we don't want to see is a Tickle coming out onto that Defiant.
Well, yeah, I think Grimstyle did a lot of work from Juan's side. You're able to just go ahead and get the screen set up, deal a bit of damage with Spirit Break. I think it is very crucial. The fact that the Whimsicott just tried to go ahead and deal some Moonblast. I think it did a Moonblast and then got a Tailwind set up, and then it was pretty much useless after that point. Sure, it kind of adds to the importance of Tailwind being able to kind of go ahead and utilize that up against for 3-4 turns up against your opponent's team. But let's also remember the Kyogre Thunder full paralysis from, I believe, turn 1 or turn 2, which really wasn't the best for Tomoyuki. So Tomoyuki is going to have to try to dodge any sort of RNG factors like that going into this game too.
Absolutely, and you say there, Costa, he's going to try to dodge them because really there's nothing he can do. It's just a roll, and he's just going to have to hope that that doesn't happen. And of course, when Juan Manuel went for that Thunder, it's not necessarily that he was saying, I really hope this paralyzes the Kyogre. It's just a nice added bonus. There's not much chance that the Thunder will do that, but it certainly pays dividends when it does happen. And yeah, it just really cemented Juan Manuel's lead in that game.
So far, Juanma has been upsetting me. I've not seen a Celesteela at all, which I am very distressed about. But I don't know if Juanma does even need to bring Celesteela in this matchup. I think so far with how they've done, I think focusing on Thundurus as a Dynamax makes a lot of sense. I think Tomoyuki just needs to be able to shut down that sort of mode, maybe deal with the Kyogre and Grimmsnarl a bit more quicker, and then going to be able to open up the sort of grounds to utilize a late Dynamax with that Thundurus. I think that Thundurus is great as a capability of having the late Dynamax, but didn't have any partner Pokemon around it to help it.
That's right, and now we see a change up from Juan Manuel's lead in the Thundurus and the Landorus Therian, but not from Tomoyuki, which is exactly the opposite of what you'd expect going into a game 2 that you have just lost. But yes, we have Thundurus here and Landorus. We've seen this Landorus wreak absolute havoc in previous games on Juan Manuel's side. And I dread to think what it can achieve in this position. And we have another very quick locking in of moves from Juan Manuel here.
Yeah, we do indeed, as it makes a lot of sense in this scenario. I think Juanma pretty much knows what he's wanting to go for. He's judging the situation that, okay, right, I did see a Whimsicott and a Kyogre. Cool, I know that you're going to be trying to go ahead and maybe get a Tailwind set up. You want to try to either focus down onto the Landorus, which would make a lot of sense, but you are leaving your Kyogre susceptible to a Thundurus focusing in on that. And there may have been a cheeky little item this Thundurus has that may improve its survivability against Tomoyuki's Kyogre.
Possibly, Costa. We're going to have to wait and see, but Juan Manuel is going for the immediate Dynamax in this Game 2 of the Grand Finals. This Thundurus that was such a havoc in the previous game is up to its usual tricks going big here. We don't see a responding Dynamax, we just see a Tailwind come from the Whimsicott Tomoyuki's side, and meanwhile what looks like a Water Spout there coming out, dealing about a third, nearly a half of health to the Thundurus, but it responds with a max lightning into Tomoyuki's Kyogre. Is not enough to pick up the knockout, quite crucially, but takes it down to incredibly low health.
It really does, and I think it makes a lot of sense to go for that sort of easy setup move with the lead that you led with from Tomoyuki's side. You go for Tailwind, go for Water Spout, you guarantee a good amount of damage. You force that Landorus to want to switch out, so the Landorus can't stay in that situation. And you're going to have to, if you're Juan, try to adapt and maybe get some Airstreams going. The Kyogre makes a lot of sense to be able to bring in. You want to sponge up any sort of Water-type move damages that comes out, as well as either break a Focus Sash on this Whimsicott, maybe even bring it down to the point where the combination of Origin Pulse and max Airstream from Juan's side, focusing into Whimsicott and also picking up the Kyogre would be quite handy, and just all of a sudden turn this from a 4 versus 4 to a 4 versus 2.
Absolutely, yeah, there's potential for big damage coming out, but in fact Thundurus goes for a max guard this turn. Interesting to see him play it safe, which is not something Juanma tends to do. We see a Moonblast coming out from Whimsicott going into the Kyogre. Really not much damage at all there. Meanwhile, we have a Thunder coming out from Tomoyuki's Kyogre going into Juanma's Kyogre, which takes it down to 5 HP with a critical hit, but it's not enough to pick up the knockout. And meanwhile, we see an Origin Pulse coming out from Juanma's Kyogre, which is a double connect on Tomoyuki's Kyogre. and the Whimsicott, and it's enough to pick up the knockout on Tomoyuki's Kyogre.
Yeah, it most definitely is. And very interesting max guard that comes out from Juan there. This may lead into a strategy of not wanting to allow Tomoyuki to bring in 2 fresh Pokemon while still having more turns of Tailwind to be able to take advantage of. But in this situation, I'm not sure how things are going to unfold. We do have Thunderous now arriving on the field from Tomoyuki's side. We'll be looking to utilize any sort of Dynamax and Max Airstream turns. But as of course we did see, Juan did have the Landorus available in that turn 1 lead. So may be able to completely take advantage of those Intimidate ability drops in order to further promote growth for its own attack stage based off of its Define ability.
That's right, Costa. It's a tool that Juanma has in the back, ready to deploy at any point. As we again see Tomoyuki taking his time over this decision, what to do next. And at this point, Whimsicott switches out for Tomoyuki in favor of the Zacian coming in, which, as we saw in the last game, is still able to deal massive damage with this Behemoth Blaze, even though it's not very effective against the Dynamax Thunderous. But we see Kyogre being withdrawn from Juanma for his own Zacian coming out as well here, and gets that immediate Intrepid Sword boost.
I do like this strategy from both of the trainers because they are both crucially wanting to utilize Max Airstream mechanic from this Thunderous to be able to allow their Zacian to take advantage of the speed increase as well, because it's very quickly looking like it's going to be a speed control battle. It already is, about who is faster to deal the immediate damage where they can. But no, Tommy, not even going for Max Airstream, purely going for Max Knuckle, bringing up the Zacian to a terrifyingly high +2 attack stage boost.
That's right, Max Knuckle was just lurking in the back there for Tomoyuki. It's really cool that we get to see that here, but Juanma's Thunderous responds with a Max Lightning onto Tomoyuki's Thunderous. Another critical hit. The critical hits are flying around all over the place, which takes down Tomoyuki's Thunderous to about 1/3 to 1/4 of its HP, as we see Dynamax ending on Juanma's Thunderous there.
Yeah, it ends, and in this situation, let's just try to see how Tomoyuki's going to try to bring this. They still have a Tailwind available to themselves, as we did see that Thunderous move first in the previous turn. So Juanma's going to have to try to find a way to slow down the Tailwind pace, or at least stall it out, and try to capitalize and absorb all of this offensive pressure that is likely to be coming out from Tomoyuki's side, as he does have the speed control advantage. He does have that very powerful Zacian by his side, which is really approaching a range where any Behemoth Blade target will be either getting huge amounts of damage dealt to them or just straight up getting KO'd.
That's right. It's very fitting, I feel like, that in this game 2 of the Galar Farewell final, we have such moody weather. We have the electric terrain as well as the rain. It's really all stacking up. And of course, we see the Landorus coming in for Juanma here. And that's something Tomoyuki has to be respectful of. It can't just dish out these Max Lightnings, knowing that the Landorus is in the back, because being a ground-type Pokemon, it wouldn't take any damage. And there we go. We see the Intimidate throwing a Defiant boost over to the Thunderous and Tomoyuki side of the field. And both the Zacian and Thunderous are looking really quite threatening here.
Oh, but we're going to be seeing the Behemoth Blade going into the Zacian, and we do see the Max Lightning going into the Landorus slot. An amazing switch out from Juanma's side. And like you said, Tomoyuki did really need to respect that switch in, and in this situation, didn't quite turn out as pleasant for them.
It didn't, which is a real shame, because this Thunderous is now set up in quite a terrifying position. But because of that Landorus switch in, that's 1 turn of its Dynamax wasted. I was very intrigued to see in the back there for Juanma, his own Thunderous was carrying a utility umbrella there, which isn't something we've had the pleasure of seeing its capabilities, but a really interesting thing to note. Meanwhile, we see the Zacian being withdrawn for Juanma in favor of this Kyogre on 5 HP, and it's in fact a double switch as Thunderous comes back out for Juanma. This, I would say, Costa, is it's a more conservative game from Juanma here. He's potentially being kept on his toes a little bit more by Tomoyuki here, as we see a Behemoth Blade coming out from Zacian into this 5 HP Kyogre, picking up the knockout.
Yeah, it does indeed. And I think in this situation, even though it looks like more defensive, it is quite risky to be able to go ahead and get those switches in, because anything that will be taking a hit regularly from a Thunderous, it's just not the best, because Tomoyuki is just running away with all of this speed control. We saw that even sure, yes, the Landorus has switched out, is going to be coming back in. It will be dropping the Zacian down to neutral of its attack, as it's currently +1 because of the previous match. That will bring it up to the +2, but you are further promoting the growth of this Thunderous. It is just clicking buttons and picking up KOs at this point, and that is very hard to come back from when it's just snowballing with all of the Defiant boosts it's getting.
Absolutely, this Thunderous really is snowballing. It's interesting that today so far we haven't seen a Calyrex Shadow Rider, another Pokemon that can really snowball, but Thunderous showing what it can do best in this situation, as Juan M is forced to bring out his Landorus sensation in the back, and there we go. We see the Intimidate being dropped down onto the Thunderous, which, thanks to its Defiant ability, gets another boost to its attack. So yes, it's Tomoyuki's Thunderous now does go back down to its small form, but both of the Pokemon on Tomoyuki's side of the field have such boosts to them. It'll be really interesting to see how Juan M is able to withstand them, if at all.
Well, yeah, and in this situation, we've got Thunderous returning back to its regular form. It's no longer in Dynamax, which means the Fly move, which is normally the candidate for max Airstream for both the Thunderous and Landorus generally, as the same type attack bonus for the Flying type itself, is limited to a 2-turn move right now. So if you don't go for Wild Charge, you're surely going for the Fly, but you'll have to wait that additional turn if you want to land a hit on this Landorus Therian.
That's right, and of course, Landorus Therian in that turn where the Thunder is in the air could just go for a Protect and render it null and void if the Landorus here is carrying Protect, but we see a switch from Tomoyuki back into this cheeky Whimsicott, coming back out, grinning at the opponents. We see a quick attack coming out from Thunderous on Juanma's, from Zacian on Juanma's side, taking out the Thunderous with a really respectable amount of damage. Meanwhile, oh dear, we see an Earthquake, which doesn't deal much damage at all to the Whimsicott, but to his own Zacian, deals a good amount of damage. Maybe Juanma just felt like it was backed into a corner there, or maybe he feels like this Landorus can deal with the two Pokemon in the back all by itself. But either way, you never want to see your partner Pokemon going down.
No, you definitely do not. And I think in this scenario, we keep forgetting about Quick Attack Zacian. I don't know why, but Juan most definitely does not. And in this scenario, unfortunately, I think this Landorus isn't going to be able to do it. And we just actually see the forfeit button being submitted by Juan there in recognition that, right, I'm not going to be able to do much about the Whimsicott on the field. It does have access to Tailwind right next to Zacian, which is right up, very healthy, and at +1 of its attack due to the Intrepid Sword. It's completely fresh, completely new, and ready to just cut through this Landorus.
Yes, and true to form, Juanma locked in that battle forfeit just as quickly as he would lock in his moves during the game itself. And we've seen something that we haven't seen so far on the stream. Juanma has dropped a game. And so he'll be taking us to a Game 3 in the Grand Finals. It's one all of us want to see. The only people who don't want to see it is the players themselves, potentially, who want to be dealing with this final match as quickly as they can. But here we go. We're going into Game 3 of the Galar Farewell.
Game 3, and I think if there's going to be a player that's going to be able to put a dent into Juanma's form, it is most definitely going to be Tomoyuki/Snow. I think they're an incredible player with good reason, very well known across the community, as well as Juanma. They both really are. So being able to see both of these trainers at this sort of level in the final, in this sort of very high stakes, pressured final Game 3 makes so much sense to me, especially if it's going to be the final Sword and Shield one. Might as well go out with the bang.
Absolutely. I myself am really glad that we're going to a Game 3 here, and it's really interesting to see that Juan has finally met a little bit of a match in Tomoyuki's Pokemon here. Juanma's now going to be thinking, well, he changed up his lead from game 1, which worked so well for him, to something different, and it didn't work out so well for him. So perhaps he'll be thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should go back to the lead that did work well for me in that first game. But we see a beautifully executed late game Dynamax there from Tomoyuki. When it works well, it can achieve that. It can clinch the game for you right at the last minute. So going into game 3, what are your thoughts here, Costa?
I think the fact that Tomoyuki adapted with game 2, having the preservation of the Whimsicott was very crucial to be able to save that Tailwind for mid to late game. Being able to, there were a couple of critical hits. Let's not forget about them across both of the trainers' side in favor. But I think being able to have that Kyogre immediately pressuring with the Tailwind Whimsicott by its side made a lot of sense, caught Juanma out with regards to the lead. I think he was already very subject to just a very quick Tailwind Water Spout play, and that pushed him back to the point where it already disrupted the board state. And I think Juanma is wanting to really get his lead correct here. He doesn't want to lead with Double Genie unless he's expecting an adaptation from Tomoyuki's side.
Which we do see in the Rillaboom coming out for Tomoyuki. There it is. We haven't seen it all day, and now in the final game of the Grand Final, we see that Rillaboom, which is applying immediate, massive pressure to the Kyogre on Juanma's side of the field, because it sets up that grassy terrain, and with access to the move Grassy Glide, which we assume it has, it will be able to move before anything else, save maybe the Prankster Grimmsnarl on Juanma's side of the field. Deal incredibly big damage to that Kyogre, which is going to want to be switching out or protecting, which, as we can see here, it cannot do.
Yeah, this is like poetry. Tomoyuki is reading through the lines of Juanma's strategy and bringing that Rillaboom in that we have not seen Tomoyuki use at all throughout the entire day. It just really pays dividends to the understanding and comprehension of board state adaptations based off of the previous games. Rillaboom having Fake Out is so crucial. Having Grass Terrain on the field, you've got the subtle recovery at the end of each turn, and you do, of course, have that Grassy Glide that takes advantage and is enhanced to a +1 in priority move, as we're going to be seeing it come out. No switch outs, and just a raw KO!
Juanma's Kyogre goes immediately down. That is a really difficult thing to put up with, as we see Grimmsnarl setting up a screen, sure, but it's not really protecting anything else next to it now that the Zacian has come down, and we see a massive Water Spout coming out from Kyogre. Oh my god! And it's a knockout on the Grimmsnarl with a critical hit as well. Oh my goodness, what a turn, and Juanma is forced immediately, already, down to his final 2 Pokemon.
Oh my lord, I can't begin to express how explosive of a turn 1 game 3 that is. Either go big or go home, and that is exactly what Tomoyuki is doing and channeling right now. Of course, this does mean that the Juanma's Thundurus and Zacian will have the speed advantage, but let's be honest, resource management-wise, you're 2 versus 4. You need to really bring this back. But I do think these two do indeed have the capability of doing it, given the synergy of their abilities, speed, and physical prowess when it comes to the damage output they can dish out.
Absolutely, it's certainly not all over yet. It's just quite a dynamic turn 1, and how fitting that we see Rillaboom here, the Galar starter that has been the most prominent throughout VGC in Generation 8 in this final game. And not only that, but having such decisive moves against Juanma's team.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in this situation, Tomoyuki, from their side of the field, they need to really make sure they take advantage and kind of meet Juanma's Dynamax, if possible. Because sure, you can have the Whimsicott in the back, you can have that Tailwind support with the Prankster, which is very, very good, but you need to be able to slow down any potential Dynamax sales that Juanma tries to ride out, try to bring this back and maybe capitalize and get that finals crown.
Absolutely, and it seems in this position that Juanma's really forced to go for the Dynamax. Meanwhile, we see a responding Dynamax from Tomoyuki, which looks like, given that dive ball, it's going to be on the Kyogre, and that is exactly what it is. What a contrast. We have a really, really offensive plays from both Pokemon trainers here, and Juanma is not going to be going down without a fight, even though he's already down to his final 2 Pokemon. We see, I believe that was a Play Rough coming out from the Zacian there going into the Kyogre. Meanwhile, an Airstream dealing massive damage to that Rillaboom, boosting the speed, but I believe we didn't see the health bar emptying there for the Rillaboom. No, we did not.
No, we really did not. I don't know how it survived, but it most definitely did. As a match strike now targets down that Thundurus, it will be dealing respectable damage. It will be dropping the speed, but it will also be increasing that Defiant, that +2 in attack right now for the Thundurus. And I think Tomoyuki is just trying to speed control without any Whimsicott on the field. And I think it makes a lot of sense with the kind of strategy, and you need to slow down any sort of aggressive hyper-offensive play coming out from Juan, who is trying to claw his way back into this.
Absolutely, yeah. Even though you give a Defiant boost to the Thundurus on Juanma's side of the field, of course, if you're moving first and you can just neutralize it before it can even move, the Defiant boost doesn't matter. So we'll have to see if that is something that Tomoyuki has been able to clutch out here. That survival of the Rillaboom there, and I believe we didn't see a Focus Sash coming out. Clearly, it's a very well-trained Rillaboom to withstand an Airstream from a Thundurus like that, and it's really coming in clutch for Tomoyuki here.
Yeah, it really is. That is most definitely, from what it looks like, an invisible Focus Sash, if I haven't seen one myself any other time. I think Tomoyuki's still holding in right there, being able to sponge up that turn 1 of Dynamax from that Thundurus from Juan's side is really, really good and powerful for him. It's going to be very hard for Juan to be able to bring this back, if he even can at this point, because there's a lot of resource available for Tomoyuki, and this Behemoth Blade is not coming anywhere near to picking up a KO right now.
It's not. It could have risked a player up, but it probably wouldn't have picked up the KO anyway, and therefore probably best avoided because it's not a completely accurate move. But we do see Tomoyuki's Dynamax Kyogre go down, +2, a double speed boost on Juanma's Thundurus and Zacian. So, you know, now that Thundurus has the attack boost as well, and it's not dealt with, now we could start to see Juanma's Thundurus snowballing. But we see another high horsepower coming out from the Rillaboom going into Juanma's Zacian, and it's enough to pick up the knockout. So now it's Juanma's Thundurus against the world.
It really is, and it's not looking too good once again from Juanma's Thundurus' side. It's quite tough because you've got a situation where people may be thinking, oh, well, why didn't Juanma sort of like adapt to that play? It's like, we need to understand the amount of different mind games that are in play between these two players in a final decisive Game 3 to win the finals. And in the scenario, what seems to have been an obvious play may have been a very progressed and advanced play, and kind of saying, no, I'm not going to fall for the bait, is what Tomoyuki must have been thinking. I'm just going to hit straight forward. I'm not going to mess about. And if I can try to capitalize off of the risk versus reward scenario, I'm going to do so. And that's exactly what we've seen from Tomoyuki, which now has a Zacian on the field as well.
He really does. He's applying a lot of pressure here. Juanma, of course, in his favor, does have the fact that this Thundurus is still Dynamaxed, and it's at +2, so it will be able to deal massive damage to potentially this Zacian. It feels like the Thundurus doesn't need to worry so much about the Rillaboom. Rillaboom isn't very effective against it. Ground-type moves won't be effective against the Thundurus. We see the Zacian wisely going for a Protect on Tomoyuki's side of the field, and a Grassy Glide, getting a little bit of chip damage onto the Thundurus, potentially getting down into a range where the Zacian can later deal with it. And a big Max Lightning coming out for Juanma's Thundurus through the Protect, deals about a quarter of health to the Zacian, and crucially, it overwrites the terrain. So not only is Rillaboom not going to be able to go for those priority Grassy Glides anymore, but the Thunder type, the Electric type moves coming out from the Thundurus are going to be dealing more damage.
Well, given the fact that Thundurus is still obviously floating and is in contact with electric terrain and there's no sort of rising voltage in play, it won't be dealing as much damage. But the crucial thing is
that is true.
Changing the terrain, like you mentioned, Charlie, is really good for Juan, who's hoping to try to claw this back. You want to try to make the Rillaboom slot as useless as possible whilst dealing any sort of damage you can on the Zacian. Maybe picking up a critical hit if there wasn't a Protect coming out from Tomoyuki's side. But unfortunately, I just don't see a scenario where Juan could bring this back. We don't even know what the final Pokemon is on Tomoyuki's side. It could well inverse be either an Incineroar, it could be a Whimsicott, but regardless, I don't see how the Zacian's going down now.
No, I know the Zacian does clutch it out, but thanks to the recall damage from the Thundurus' Wild Charge, it does go down. That was a really good point there, Costa, with the Thundurus not being grounded. But we see Juanma going down, and we have the winner of the Galar Farewell for Victory Road being Tomoyuki. Tomoyuki, who clutched it out there. If I'm honest, Juan M was playing so decisively throughout the tournament that I thought he might just be able to do it, but he fell down to that insane turn one play from Tomoyuki there, getting a double knockout, being immediately brought down to his final two Pokemon.
Wish I could find a better word for explosive, because that's the only one I could think of right now. High octane, explosive, absolutely game-defining turn one of that game 3. It's quite tough to be able to lean into that. You feel like you have a good tap on your opponent, given the fact that you've already played 2 games with them in the same set. You're like, okay, I feel like they're surely not going to go for that risky play, right? Because there's a lot of different other scenarios with probabilities and all that to take into consideration. But in that scenario, we just see Tomoyuki saying, no, I don't see that much of a negative for going for this play. Sure, there may be some, but I should be able to be put in a better enough position to come back from it. I may have the 4th Pokemon, which we didn't actually see revealed. It could have been a Whimsicott. Like, okay, cool. I know I've got speed control on the back. If I need to, I will bring it in, and I will try to capitalize off of that. And unfortunately, Juan M just wasn't able to bring it back. It just lost too many resources from that turn 1. Because if anyone's going to try to bring that back and do a good job, it's going to be Juan M, because of how well-rounded of a player they are, and the fact that they're on form. He's really on form. He could have done it if he had more resources, but alas, he didn't. It was just too much for that turn 1.
It really was, Costa, and it's always satisfying in a way to see someone who goes down in the first game to then win the subsequent 2 games and claw it back. It just goes to show the level of stamina that Tomoyuki has. And there we go. We see the top 8 bracket there with the winner of the Galar Farewell, Tomoyuki Yoshimura, the champion with his Zacian, Kyogre, Incineroar, Rillaboom, Whimsicott, and Thundurus. Huge congratulations to him.
Exactly, and huge commiserations, of course, to Juan M, which definitely made it a spicy final, no doubt. Being the number 1 seed, having 8-0 from day 1 Swiss rounds, and also having a Celesteela, which I'm still upset about Juan, I'm not going to lie. Haven't seen it on stream yet. But we do have the Thundurus Incarnate actually rocking a utility umbrella, which very underutilized item. We haven't seen it as much competitively. Very, very niche, but it makes a lot of sense in the team composition Juan's gone ahead and actually implemented.
It really does. It's an item I don't think I've ever seen playing competitively, but it's quite a fitting way to end this tournament because, looking ahead to Generation 9, who knows what further surprises we'll have there, like rarely seen items like Utility Umbrella. So, we have a very well-known archetype taking home the tournament in the Zacian and Kyogre, but a little bit of a hint towards things to come with the unknown and a very exciting new Generation 9. And of course, we have to say to Juan Manuel, making second in this tournament of 269 players total, an absolutely incredible achievement, and I hope he can still feel really proud of that.
Oh, 100%. I'm sure he will, as we all feel that. But huge congrats once more to Tomoyuki Yoshimura, aka Snow, for doing incredibly well and being crowned the champion of the final Victory Road Sword and Shield tournament. And what a way to do it. What a way to do it. 2 weeks roughly before the new games make their way through. So obviously, this is the end for Sword and Shield for Victory Road, but we will be going ahead and moving on to the newly anticipated Scarlet and Violet games. So what we're going to do is just spin up once again the social scene just so you can get a tap on and connect and follow Victory Road for their news. They are going to be going ahead. They've got a plethora of new stuff coming down the line. So trust me when I say this, do not go anywhere because we are going to try to bring this new game and this new generation in with a bang that is worthy for going into the season 2023 of Video Game Championships.
That's right. Sign up now to these socials and you won't regret it later. Given there won't be any VGC tournaments happening until the new year, Victory Road is your go-to place for staying up to date with what's going on in the meta. It's a resource that many, many Pokemon trainers swear by. So don't miss out.
Yep, don't miss out from myself. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here, joined by Mr. Charlie Merriman. I think he's done an incredible job. I hope you guys think that as well. But thank you very much for joining us with this stream that we had today, the show. Please make sure, once again, to keep up to date with all of the news from Victory Road. And we will be seeing you soon when the new games come out. So please make sure to have as much fun as you can. Enjoy the games when they come out. But don't forget, competitive is just around the scene and it is coming.
Is coming soon, Costa. Thank you so much for those words there. It's been a pleasure to cast alongside you today. It's been wonderful to make my casting debut with Victory Road today, and really enjoyed saying farewell to Galar. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the stream, and I'll throw it back over to you, Costa, just to wrap up.
Of course. So, thank you very much, everybody. We wish you a lovely new week. We'll be catching you soon, and we hope you take care. See you, and thank you very much for joining us.